I'm back in the studio. Look at it. You see the big time production budget we have with the TV and I'm outside in the brick. I'm back in the studio. The Real Estate of Life is back in the studio. This week we are talking about subject to transactions. Subject to transactions. How do you buy a property without taking on debt for yourself? We're going to talk about that. I'm back in the studio. I'm feeling good. Mr. Producer got his own new little setup in the background. Y'all can't see it, but he's feeling some kind of way about it. So DJ, guess what? Hit that music, please.
Support for this program comes from the Digital Broadcasting Network, presenting podcasts and web series from everyday people who have an extraordinary passion to make the world a better place.
Hey, welcome back to the Real Estate of Life. This is your host, Kevin Riles. And this week it's Kevin Riles. It's not Kevin Riles and Friends, but we got some friends coming up in the next couple of weeks. I want to take a point of personal privilege. That's what they say in the church when they're about to say something that's not on the script. And thank everyone for listening to the Real Estate of Life over the last year, a little bit more than a year. We're headed towards episode 60 now. And I just was at an event last night here in Houston, and I had 4 people come up to me, 3 of which I didn't really know, saying that, hey, man, I really enjoy your podcast. I really, find it interesting. And I asked them for feedback, give me real feedback. There's anything you want to see or hear. And they said, no, you're doing a great job. So that was really good, unprompted feedback. So I want to thank all of you out there that if I don't see you, but just the fact that you're listening or watching the videos is really important to me and Mr. Producer. So we do appreciate that. I also want to give a shout out to Z. I met Z last night, and Z, I told him I was going to shout him out because he said he and his wife listen in the car, and they're getting into real estate investing, and they've gone through and kind of jumped around on my podcast, and they even like the motivational podcast. So I told Z I was going to shout him out. So Z, I'm shouting you out as well. I appreciate you and your wife listening to me and trying to get into real estate investment. That's one of the reasons that I do this. And then I have a favor to ask before we get into today's subject is, Mr. Producer and I have a goal that we want to increase the number of subscribers to our podcast substantially this year. And so I'm asking you to do a couple things. One, I'm asking you to subscribe. So right now, if you're listening to the podcast online from our website or my website, I appreciate that. And I appreciate you looking at the video, but if you see over to the right, you'll see subscribe buttons. I want you to click over to whatever your preferred choice on your smartphone or smart device is, whether Android or Apple product, and hit subscribe. Please subscribe, please subscribe, please subscribe. So I want you to subscribe first. Secondly, I want you to share. Please share this either by text if you go into your podcast and click on a specific podcast and you really like that subject, or whether you like the subject or not, I'm actually just asking you to share it, that you can share it via text to most of your friends, send it out to your friends. And I'm asking you to share it via email. If you receive our email distribution, because every time we have a new podcast, I send out an e-blast, if you could share it. So if you can subscribe and share, I really would appreciate that. I want to grow our subscriber base so that everyone is getting this good information. So please subscribe and share to the Real Estate of Life with Kevin Riles. You want people to get this good information. I want people to get this good information. So the word for 2019, the 2 words for 2019 are subscribe and share. The word for today, though, is subject to. You notice that all 3 have S's: subscribe, share, subject to. Y'all get that? Yeah. All right. Subject to. What is subject to? And so one of the things that I want to try to do this year was kind of start the year with maybe some different things. And we have someone coming up in the next couple of weeks that's going to talk about death. I have a client of mine who owns a string of funeral homes, and we're going to talk about death and real estate and death and things of that nature. And so I think that's important for people to know. But I also today wanted to begin the year with talking about different ways to acquire property. And I think I may have covered this in an earlier podcast in a very short form, but one of the ways that you can purchase a property as an investor or even as a homeowner is a method called subject to. All right, subject to. And subject to is, here's the situation. You find a property, the homeowner's either in distress or they don't want the property, but the homeowner has debt on the property. They have a mortgage on the property. And so there are ways to purchase that property without paying off that debt. And so you might ask, well, why would a homeowner want to do that? Most of the time, the homeowner may want to do that because they're in a distressed situation and they're really wanting to get rid of the property one way, shape, or form. Would most homeowners want you to come in either with cash or your own loan to pay off the loan? I'm sure they would, but sometimes they get to a point where they just need relief from that particular mortgage. And so one of the ways to assist them in doing that is to do a subject to. Subject to, literally, if I put it in a sentence, I am purchasing a property subject to the existing debt. Right? I'm purchasing a property subject to the existing debt. So that's where the word subject to. What does that mean? That means that the existing debt that's in place in that property will remain with that property. You will not be paying it off when you purchase the property. A lot of people think that when you purchase a property that the title of the property and the debt on the property are all one transaction, right? That getting title and placing debt on the property, or getting ownership and placing debt on the property or lien against the property, are one transaction. And really, they can be separated, right? You can gain title to a property without paying off the debt, right? And that's where subject to comes in. You can get title to a property. Someone can title. Right now, I'm sitting in the studio, the worldwide headquarters of channel713.com. And if this building had debt on it and I wanted to purchase it, I could purchase this. And when I say purchase it, I mean, if I wanted to take possession of this property, the owner of this building could title me the property. In other words, deed me the property, not title, deed me the property. And there is with existing debt, right? So those are two separate transactions. When you purchase a property, whether it be for your home or for an investment property, you usually do two things. One, the current owner of that property deeds the property over to you, right? And then two, you take out a loan on the property, and the lender places a lien against the property that says that this lien will stay in place until you have paid off this note. All right. So those are two separate things, all right? But they typically work in conjunction. What a subject to does is it separates out the deed process and says, okay, Mr. Owner, you are in distress, or you wanting to sell this property. I'm willing to give you X for this property, right? I might give you $5,000, I might give you $100,000, whatever that deal is. But I don't want to, as a buyer, want to take out new debt. I like your debt structure. Or you're in a situation where we don't have time. You may be right before foreclosure. So I'm going to bring your note current, and I'm going to pay you some money on top of that for your time and trouble. And then I'm going to take over the existing note. And the reason this is also a little bit popular in the investment world, if you can get it done, is because a lot of people that are in distress in this market have relatively good interest rates. They may have 3.75 or 4% or 4.25% or whatever the case may be. And so with that being said, they may have a debt structure that is favorable. They may have a mortgage note from a principal, interest, taxes, and insurance standpoint that is favorable to be able to lease out the house or ultimately flip the house. So at the end of the day, the motivation of the seller to do a subject to is typically distress, but sometimes it's not distress. It's just, hey, I couldn't sell it. I just want to get out of it. I don't have to worry about the note anymore. And so, this is an option that is available. From the buyer's perspective, what it allows you to do is you can do a subject to literally in a day. Someone can sign over the note. Sign over the note. They can sign over the deed, and you can either record the deed or not record the deed, but you have ownership and have every right of ownership in that you would have if you purchased it outright cash or got another loan. Now, let me say what I should have said at the very beginning. Hi, my name is Kevin Riles. I am not an attorney. I just play one on the Real Estate of Life with Kevin Riles, seeking attorney's advice with all this information. I'm just telling you, based on experience, how this stuff works. Did that sound really official? Yeah, okay. Here we go. Mr. Producer gave me a head shake that sounded like something real. So anyway, long story short, but no, seriously, you will need an attorney to draw up an addendum to a contract or a subject to contract to do this, but it is possible. So pros and cons of subject twos, right? So I'm gonna go over the pros first. The pros, it allows you to acquire property with ease, quickly. It does not preclude you from needing to get title insurance or at least do a title search. So if someone is in distress, they may also be in distress and paying the taxes. They may also have a federal tax lien, and that stuff goes with you if you purchase it. So you still need to do your due diligence as far as the property is concerned. That's why I always tell people at least get them under contract and then do your due diligence. And then after you do your due diligence with title, even just having someone run a title report, then you know that you're okay as far as the title is concerned. So the pro is that you can close a subject to transaction relatively quickly. The other pro is that typically it's going to be much less money out of pocket than if you went through a lender. Typically, again, if someone is in foreclosure, you're bringing them current. You're getting rights to be able to deal with their mortgage company and bring them current, and then you may be giving them some money to purchase the property or for their troubles. All right, so it's typically a much cheaper way to get into a property. Thirdly, what I would say is that it gives you the same rights as ownership. So you can either rent that property out with the existing debt, or you can flip it. And again, that's a valid deed that is being signed over to you. And so therefore you could flip that particular property as well, which a lot of folks do. They do a short-term flip, like a quick flip, or they do a long-term flip over 12 months. But again, it gives you the right of ownership. And then the other pro is it gives you another tool in the toolbox to acquire property. Some of you out there, in fact, I talked to a young man last night who said, I've been saving up money. I still don't have enough money to possibly buy an investment property outright. Well, because of the savings, this gives you another tool that, hey, you may have enough money to do a subject to if you do it correctly, because again, it doesn't cost you typically as much money on average to do a subject to versus anything else. So, and then from a tool standpoint, you can purchase it outright, you can do a subject to, or you could pay cash for it. But subject twos, again, are typically a little bit cheaper. So those are some pros as far as subject twos. This is a pro and a con, so I'm going to put this on both lists. Everyone always asks me, well, what about the due on sale clause in the deed of trust? So when you purchase a property and you have a mortgage, you sign a deed of trust, and that deed of trust literally places a lien against the property. It's a 21-page document that I usually call it the don't pay, don't stay document. Right? It says that, hey, if you don't pay this loan, this note that's attached to this house, then this is how we will foreclose on you. And one of the things in that deed of trust is a section called the due on sale clause. And the due on sale clause says that the bank has the right, and I'm pausing there, pregnant pause, has the right to call the note due upon the sale of the property, sale being the transfer of the deed. So people typically are nervous about doing a subject to because they feel that if I sign over the deed, then the bank is going to call the note, right? Because that's what the deed of trust says. But the deed of trust says you have a right to do it. The bank has a right to call it. Doesn't mean that they will. And practice over 20 years has said that as long as the bank is getting their money, especially if it was a property that they were behind on the note, the bank doesn't care where the money is coming from as long as they're getting it, right? And so, again, seek the advice of an attorney, but the deed of trust does not say that they definitely will call the note. It says that they have the right to do. And experience has told me, based on my own experience and then also just investors that have done this, is that they will continue to be okay as long as they're getting a note from someone, all right, getting the payment from someone. And so the pro of that is that you can continue to pay the note. The bank doesn't care as long as they are getting the payment. The con of that is if you have an issue with the bank. And so what some subject to investors will do is they will get a power of attorney that from the buyer, basically giving them right to deal with the bank on a consistent basis. So they will fax that power of attorney or get that power of attorney to the lender so that they can call on the borrower's behalf to deal with the insurance, find out about the escrow, and deal anything that they need to do as far as the bank is concerned. Because if you have a mortgage with anyone, I just can't call on your mortgage to find out what's going on. I would have to have your permission to do so. And so typically, as a part of the transaction, a power of attorney is executed so that who the loan name is in, they give permission to the subject to buyer to deal with the bank. And so that can be a con. And the only way I've really seen it being a con is if there's a insurance event during Hurricane Harvey, for instance, here in Houston, or if there's a fire, then the bank is going to deal with the person that has the loan in their name, right? And so if that person has now moved on from the house, then you need to kind of have permission to be able to do that. But ultimately, if there is a loss, when the insurance company insures that particular property, the bank typically cuts a check to the contractor in the current person's name that's with the loan and the contractor. And so you still have to have access. Now, the likelihood of that happening is probably very slim, but it has happened in the past. But I would say probably less than, if I had to guess, less than 5% of the time. So therefore, subject to, as long as you don't have a insurance event, again, that can be a con as well. And really, that's the only con. The other con for the borrower is that you are hoping that the subject to buyer is paying the note on time and that you have avoided, by giving up ownership, the possibility of foreclosure and things of that nature. And so that's a con for the potential seller of a subject to, but 9 times out of 10, they are selling it subject to because they're in distress or don't want the property anyway. And for the seller of a subject to, obviously, the loan is still in your name. It still counts against your debt to income ratio. So it may be difficult to go buy another property because that property is still being counted against your debt to income ratio. But again, these are usually in distress situations. So subject to is a creative way, but it's been around forever for you to be able to purchase property. And I think, in 1.9 for what I am trying to do is give people other methods of acquiring a property, especially in this market where deals are a little tight and people are looking for ways to get into real estate without necessarily having to be in a situation where they need a whole lot of cash outlay up front. And you can also assign subject twos as well. So for those of you that are interested in wholesaling, and we'll do some podcasts with some wholesalers, then this may be a way to do that. So I wanted to start off this year with a subject to, but again, remember the 3 S's for today. First and foremost, subscribe. Please, can you see that little subscribe button on your phone? Just click on it real quick, subscribe. Then second of all, share. Please share the Real Estate of Life. We've gotten such good feedback. We really want you to share it. And then when you get out there and you start looking for deals, think about subject to. I will tell you that you need to get an attorney to assist you. For those of you out there that are in Texas, it is recommended, at least by attorneys I talk to, that you use a 1-to-4 family contract to do this, but that you get an attorney to draw up a subject to addendum to that particular contract. So some of you out there, if you have questions about that, feel free to contact me at the office. I'll give my phone number out, 281-403-3700, 281-403-3700. And then, of course, my email is kevin@kevinrylescommercial.com. And by the way, this works with residential and commercial as well. So that's how we starting off the 2019. I know this wasn't long, but I want to come in to the studio, drop a little knowledge on you for the 1.9, and I can't wait to get this year going. I will see you next week.